Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Ministry of Fantastical Games and Sports. I'm your administrator, Ezeco. And if you have stumbled upon this video and don't know what it is, or if you're new to the server and not quite sure what's going on, this is an introduction video to a new sport that we're having here at the Ministry. At the Ministry, we have two sports going on right now. What has been going on for the last few months and was a big focus last year was grab ball, which is a sport from Star Wars that is basically a mix between lacrosse and basketball for anyone who's unfamiliar with it, which most people are. What we're talking about today is the reveal of a new sport. Any of you who can see the logo will know that that sport is Quidditch. This is something I've been working on honestly for years. It's something I've been passionate about as a Harry Potter fan, as a sports fan. I used to play a game called Quidditch Manager where you took over a team, created it, and kind of led it up the ladder to try and win the championship and get to the highest level. We are starting a new thing here at the ministry that is very similar. It is going to be a professional version of Quidditch that we will be playing over the next few months, and I'm really excited to dive into it today. So if you guys are watching this video and you're not part of the server and you're interested in Quidditch, check out the links in the description. Head over to our Discord. Check out the website. Website's really just a forum right now where we post the results and kind of maybe post some news stories for role play purposes. But the ministry is a server where we play sports management games. Anybody who's familiar with Football Manager or head coach mode in any other sports simulation games, you'll be somewhat familiar with this. But you take over a team, you manage your players, acquire new ones, manage your salary cap, all that kind of stuff, just trying to make the best team possible. So I'm going to apologize in advance for the length of this video. This is already a long intro, but this is going to be a big one. It might take a while. If you get bored, I'm going to uh, go down to the bottom and do my best to cut the video into slices so you can skip to chapters that you want. But without further ado, let's get into it and let's talk about BIQL. What is BIQL? It is the British and Irish Quidditch League. That is the canon version of Harry Potter Quidditch that we will be modeling here. Those of you who have read ahead, just wait. We're going to get into it all. But for those of you who don't know, BIQL is 13 teams throughout Britain and Ireland. They are the canon teams from Harry Potter that we will be using. We are going to play a full season of 2 games against every team. That means every team is going to play 24 games total. There will be 26 weeks total, or I'm sorry, 26 game slates total in the season. So every team will have 2 buys where they don't play at all, and you'll get 24. At the end of the season, we will count up the league table. Those of you who pay attention to soccer will be familiar with this. You get 3 points for every win, 1 point for a tie, and no points for a loss. The team with the most points at the end of the season will be awarded the BIQL League Cup. That is the primary award that we're working with. I know that in canon, that works with whoever scores the most points in a season. But in our testing and in our discussions, that honestly seems a little silly. It seems a little lopsided. It doesn't really make sense, but that's okay because we did incorporate it with the team that does score the most points at the end of the season will win another award called the Golden Broom. Uh, you can kind of compare this to the Golden Boot in soccer as well. You know, the player who scores the most goals in soccer is awarded the Golden Boot. So we have 2 awards here in BIQL. It's the League Cup, which is the goal for every team, get the most points in your wins and your ties and your losses. And then there is the Golden Broom. So there's 2 things for everybody to really aim for there. And it's not necessarily true that the team who wins the League Cup is going to win the Golden Broom and vice versa. So plenty to play for there. But those of you who are watching this and are kind of interested, but you're not quite sure what Quidditch is, or you've maybe been in part of grab ball and you're not really a huge Harry Potter fan like I am, and you know Star Wars and you know what we've done, you know what Quidditch is. So what is Quidditch? Well, Quidditch is played on a pitch just like this. It's an oval pitch. It's very large. I don't know the exact dimensions. I'm sorry. We'll say it's 100 yards, 300 feet. Sure, why not? Probably about the size of a football field or a soccer pitch. That's not necessarily important though, because of course it's all played in the air. It's played on broomsticks with magic. You're not allowed to use magic in the game. That is not modeled in the game engine either, so don't worry about that. The magic is in flying the brooms. So that's the pitch. Well, who plays on it? Each team has 3 chasers. We can see them here in Team Red and Team Blue. Each team has 3 chasers. Each team also has 1 keeper. Of course, the keeper's job is to protect the goals. You can see them here at the end. There are 3 goals for each team. The chaser's job is to take the ball, that ball being the quaffle, and move it down the field, whether they fly down, pass the ball around, however they can do it, get the ball to the other end, get the ball through the hoops. If you get the ball through the hoop, that's worth 10 points. Chasers can tackle each other. They can steal the ball from each other. They can do everything except for actually grab onto another player or grab onto their broom. Those will be fouls. Those are modeled into the game. They don't have any explicit, hey, you grabbed onto the broom. But there are fouls in the game. When a team fouls the other team, there is a penalty shot. This is also modeled. So every foul that occurs in the game will incur a penalty shot, which is a one-on-one shot, 1 chaser, 1 keeper. They take a shot at the goal. If they get it in, it's 10 points. There's 4 other players on the pitch, 2 for each team. These are called the beaters. Now, the beaters work with a ball called the bludger. The bludger is a nasty, I think it's made of cast iron or something like that. It's not nice. It flies around. It's mean. The beaters each have a little bat, kind of like a short baseball bat. Their job is to find that bludger, knock it around, and try and knock it into the opposing team. Keep it away from your own team. Knock it into the other team. If you can knock it into the other team, of course, it's going to hurt like nobody's business. But it's also going to most likely cause them to drop the ball. That causes a loose quaffle. Each team scrambles for it. Whichever one gets there first comes up with it. There's one last player on each team. This is called the seeker. The seeker is, to many, the most important player on the pitch. The thing with the seeker is they only have 1 ball to deal with. There's only 1 single ball. They don't touch the quaffle. They don't touch the bludger. They dodge the bludger, but they don't touch them either. They work with the golden snitch. The golden snitch is worth 150 points, and it ends the game. The game does not end until a seeker catches the snitch. Now that means that some games can go on for multiple hours. In our testing with the Hogwarts Quidditch Cup that we tried, we had a few games that lasted 3 hours. Most of our games are, it's crafted for the game to last between an hour and a half. There are extremes. We've had a game last 24 minutes. There are extremes. We've had a game last 4 hours. I think was the longest one that I did in our actual engine that tested. So again, it doesn't end until you catch it, and catching it doesn't guarantee a win either. It just ends the game and it gives your team 150 points. There's some strategy that goes into that. You'll be able to manipulate it, but that's the team. 7 players aside, 14 players total on the pitch. They fly on brooms. There's 3 balls. You can't touch a ball that's not yours. Stay away from the bludger. It hurts. Grab the quaffle if you're a chaser. Score. Block it if you're a keeper. And catch the snitch if you're a seeker. So, now that we know what Quidditch is, how do you manage a Quidditch team? Well, there's 3 main elements to managing the Quidditch team. The first one is your roster. The roster has to be a certain size. You have to have a minimum of 9 players on your roster. and you have to have a maximum of not 80 players. I don't know why that says 80. The maximum is 15 players. So you cannot have more than 15 players on your roster. You must play another typo here, but you must play 3 chasers, you have to play 2 beaters, you have to play a keeper, and you have to play a seeker. Most players are not going to have enough stamina to play the entire game. We'll talk about stamina in a minute, but you're going to be playing backups. So you have to assign your best players to play as much as they possibly can, and your less good players, when they have to play, minimize the negative impact that they're going to have on the game. My suggestion for every team is to play more than the minimum, even more than one more than the minimum. There are injuries in this game, which means if you have only 3 chasers playing on the field because you were able to do that, if one of them gets hurt, they're out for the rest of the game, and you now only have 2 chasers on the field, which is going to hamper your team significantly. So watch out for injuries, watch out for penalties, manage your players as best you can, put the best players in the best spot to succeed. The second thing to managing a team is the salary cap. If you pay attention to this is really an American sport thing. We have implemented here as a competitive balance type deal, but American sports have a salary cap. Most of them. You have to spend at least a certain amount, and you cannot spend more than that. We've implemented this here as a balance because otherwise, what's to stop a team from paying a guy 100 million galleons just so that no other team has them? It doesn't make sense. It's not fair. So that's what we have. Here, you must spend at least 80 million galleons on your roster, and you cannot spend more than 120. So it's a $40 million gap in between the two. That's more than enough. I actually had to raise the floor because originally it was 60. We haven't gotten anyone close to that in grab ball. The cap is 120 right now. That may go up based on how we see some things going on. I raised it slightly from the 115 that it was, but with the expanded roster size, we may have to raise that slightly. And each player has a contract. That contract can be as little as 1 year, so you just sign them for the rest of the year. It can be as long as 4 years, so they're on your team guaranteed for the next 4 years unless you cut or trade them. There are cuts allowed. There's some rules with that where you still have to pay them a certain salary, so you're not just grabbing a guy off free agency, cutting him immediately. You have to be strategic about who you're putting on your team, why you're putting on your team, and how much you're paying them. The specific rules for that are on the league sheet, which will be linked in the Discord. The general idea, though, is if you cut a guy before the halfway point of the season and they have 3 years or 4 years on a contract, you have to pay them 50% of that salary for 50% of the salary from the year that you cut them for 2 years. If they have 2 years or less remaining on their contract, then you only have to pay them for the remainder of the year. If you cut them after the halfway point of the season, that goes down. I think it's 25% is the penalty, but you still have to pay them something. So you can't just grab guys, cut them, grab guys, cut them. Then there's the team strategy. Once you've set your roster, you're under the salary cap, everything's good. You know who's going to play. You can set your strategy. There's 3 main strategies in this game right now. This may increase, these may change a little bit as we experiment with the game more, but these are what we're feeling that are good right now. Your chasers have a pace that goes from very slow to very fast. The faster you play, the less stamina you have available for your chasers. They do have a stamina value. That dictates how much usage they can be assigned per game. If you set your pace to be faster, that number will go down. It's a percentage, so not everybody goes down the same amount. But You play faster, you have less available. You play slower, you have more stamina available. However, you play faster, you do not pass as well because everybody's flying all over the place. It's a little harder to get the quaffle into a correct spot or keep track of people. You play slower, that becomes a little easier, so passing becomes easier, becomes more accurate. The faster you play, the more you're flying at the keeper, the more accurate your shots are because the keeper has less time to react to that shot. The slower you play, the less accurate your shots are because the keeper has more time to line up in front of the hoop and block that shot. So there's some give and take. If you have teams that are really good at passing but aren't great at shooting, maybe you want to play a little faster. It's going to cost you some stamina, sure, but you can sacrifice some of your passing accuracy so that you can get better shots because your team isn't quite as good at shooting. And then vice versa, if your team is not great at shooting, if it's not great at passing, but it's great at shooting, maybe you play a little slower. You can sacrifice some shot accuracy in favor of some pass accuracy. Beaters have an aggression value as well. That is conservative, balanced, and aggressive. Playing conservative means you're going to launch less spludgers. However, they're going to be more accurate. So if your team is shooting at 30% and you're launching 100 bludgers a game and 30 of them are hitting, but you want to hit a little bit more, maybe not shoot quite as many, you can lower that down to conservative. Maybe they'll shoot 50 a game and maybe they'll still hit 30 of them, but they're more accurate. The more aggressive they play, the more they're going to launch. That's going to be less accurate because it's kind of a frenzy. They're just launching as fast as they can. But maybe that's what you want to do. Maybe you just want to get them out there, knock the quaffle out as much as you possibly can, or give yourself as much as a chance as you possibly can. Seeker strategy. This one's a little complicated to explain, so bear with me. But with seeker strategy, you're basically deciding how much is winning important to you. There's a few different strategies you can set here. The base level is never lose, never tie. That means your chaser is only going to be allowed, your seeker is only going to be allowed to catch a snitch if you would win and you wouldn't tie. So if you're down by 140 points, your seeker's in a position to catch, they're going to try and catch a snitch so that you win by 10 points. You're down by 160, they're not going to catch at all so that you don't lose. There's another setting where you can set it so you allow ties. So if you're down by 140, you would win. If you're down by 150, you would tie the game, so it will allow your seeker to catch. But if you're down by 160, you'd lose. It won't allow them to catch. From there, there's a bunch of number values, which dictates how much are you down by that you would accept a catch. If you select 160, you will allow your seeker to catch the snitch if you are down by 160 points. You're still going to lose, but you're only going to lose by 10. The theory behind that is variable. It depends on the manager. It's up to you what you want to set it. You can set that from 160 all the way down to a lot. I don't really remember the maximum, but there is a setting that also says always allow losses. So if you set it to that, your seeker is going to catch the snitch no matter the circumstance. If you're down by 160, they'll catch and lose by 10. If you're down by 2,000, they'll catch a snitch. You'll lose by 1,850. That might save yourself some embarrassment. Whatever you want to decide to do there, you can set your seeker strategy. We call those suicide snitches. And, it's up to you how you want to play it. So we've talked a little bit about stamina. We've talked a little bit about accuracy and all that. What does that all mean? Those are your attributes. There are 10 attributes that really matter. Accuracy, of course, is accuracy in actually shooting the quaffle. It's only used by chasers, and it just determines how accurate they are at shooting the quaffle. Passing ability, passing the quaffle. I mean, we're kind of sticking the same thing. Still only used by chasers. It just dictates how accurate they are when trying to pass to each other. Defense. This is your defensive ability against opposing chasers so that you can get in front of them and play some defensive formations. Maybe you tackle them or steal the ball, cause some turnovers. Still only used by chasers. Speed. This is how fast you are. There may in the future be something where you could buy different broomsticks and that gets your team a little faster. But every player knows how to handle their broom a little differently. They know how to angle their body just right and get a little bit more speed out of whatever broom they're using. So speed is about how fast you move. This is used by chasers when they're going for loose quaffles and trying to pick up a turnover. It's also used by seekers when they're chasing after the snitch. The faster you are, the faster you're going to catch up to that snitch, especially in comparison to your opposing seeker. Dexterity, that's your hand-eye coordination. Anybody who's played a sport knows what hand-eye coordination is. Imagine baseball. You're swinging a bat. You try to get that bat on the ball. That's dexterity. That's hand-eye coordination. That's used by two players. That's used by beaters when they're trying to hit the bludger. That's going to determine how accurate they are at aiming that bludger at other players. It's also used by seekers for catching the snitch. So keeping one hand on that broom to keep control, reaching out, trying to grab that snitch. It's a small little thing. The thing's no bigger than a walnut. So you've got to have a good eye. You've got to have good hands and get out and grab it. Spotting. This is used by seekers to look for that snitch. Like I said, it's the size of a walnut. It's very small, but it is golden. So, it kind of glints in the sun and that. Spotting determines how well they can see it. As you watch games, you'll see sometimes a snitch will pop up and neither seeker will see it and it'll just fly off. It's because they just didn't see it. They didn't have the spotting for it. Sometimes you'll see one seeker spot the snitch before the other. That's because they had a higher spotting ability in that point, and so they'll get an advantage on the initial snitch chase. Handling is broom ability. So we kind of talked about that with speed, how you can maneuver that broom around to get the best maneuverability out of it. It's used by chasers for moving the quaffle and getting away from bludgers. So even though your beaters may be really accurate, they may have a really high dexterity. If the opposing team chasers are also really good at handling the broom, they may still get out of the way. Blocking, that's getting in front of the quaffle. That's used by keepers to try and block shots. Stamina, that's used by every player. It determines how much of a game they can play. It's based on usage percentage, not something like minutes. So, say 33 is their stamina. That doesn't mean they can only play 33 minutes. That means they can play 33% of the game. Injury is a little, I don't want to say it's difficult to understand, but it's not what you might necessarily think. It does not determine whether or not your player will get injured. What injury determines is how long your player is going to be injured. So if your player has an A injury rating, then they may only be out for the rest of the game or one game. D rating, they could be out for 5 to 9 games. So your injury rating determines how long a player gets injured when they get injured. Now, with all these ratings, what I just alluded to, they are represented in letter grade values. Those letter grades are A, B, C, D, and F. If you're familiar with the American grading system, you'll know what that is. These are relative to other players of the same position. So just because you're an A accuracy does not mean you're an A accuracy like flat. It doesn't mean that if you look it up, it's going to be a 90 or a 95. It means when you compare your accuracy to all the other chasers, you are in an A area. You're A grade compared to all other chasers. Every position has these. This gets the most confusing, the most tripping, the most trip you up when you look at something that's not used, and so that position would have a lesser rating. Say you have a beater that's an A accuracy. That doesn't mean they're good at shooting the quaffle. That just means that compared to all the other beaters in the league, they're pretty good. But if you put them up against a chaser, they may be pretty bad. They may be a D in accuracy when we look at that. So remember, when you're looking at the letter grades, it's in comparison to everybody else at their position. That will come up specifically when we allow cross positioning or out of position playing. Right now, you can only play the position that is your best position. So players that are designated as chasers can only play the chaser position. Beaters can only play beater, so on and so forth. In the future, we will allow players to play out of position. I just haven't come up with a way for penalties because a chaser doesn't really know how to be a beater as well. So they're going to suffer some. I just have to work out how we're going to do that. So that will be implemented in the future. But right now, you can only play what position is designated for that player. So we've talked about all the other stuff. We've talked about positions. We've talked about the teams. We've talked about management. We've talked about attributes. All that in mind, it's time to actually get into what teams we have. If you already know how this game's played, at least in an idea standpoint, this is what you've been waiting for. So it's time to fast forward to this part. This is the team reveal. There are 13 teams in BIQL, the British and Irish Quidditch League. We're going to go in alphabetical order. We're going to look at all of them so that once this video drops, you will be able to ping me in Discord and say, hey, I want this team. Maybe you're a huge fan. Maybe you look at these rosters like, oh, they look good. I'd like to take them over. So let's take a look at who we've got. First up, we have the Appleby Arrows. They play in Appleby in Westmoreland, England, in a stadium called the Orchard. Every team has 13 players generated for them. 5 chasers, 4 beaters, 2 keepers, and 2 seekers. Ignore the fact that there's 2 chasers at the bottom here. It's going to be on every page now that I've noticed it, but that's just the same player as the top 2, so you can ignore that. But the Appleby Arrows, this is a really old team. It's a really important team in Quidditch history. If you're familiar with the lore, you're going to know about it. I'm not going to go through every team and their lore. There's simply too much for me to remember, and I didn't write any of it down, so don't worry about it. But they play in England, and they don't look too bad. They've got a pretty good chaser here in Christopher Barker, who's out of England. He's only 20 years old. He's going to be good for them for a while. He may be one of the best chasers in the entire league, just looking at it. Aaron Moore is also a 20-year-old. He's out of Ireland. That's a pretty good one. This is a pretty solid team for Appleby to start off with. And I guess I didn't mention this point. There is a country assigned for every team. We have 16 countries in the league. I'm not going to go through them all because I can't remember them all, so I'll miss one. But that's not just for flavor. If you're looking at this and go, oh, Appleby, okay, that's cool, but I'd really like to play as England or something. Hold on. Because in Season 2, we will be having a Quidditch World Cup. A lot of people look forward to that because of the old GameCube game, Quidditch World Cup. Also, of course, it's very prominent in the Harry Potter books. That it is going to happen. We have 16 countries. There will be enough players generated for every team to field a full, or every country to field a full team, and everybody will have a chance to take over a country of their choosing. So if you're an American and you want to run the United States team, it's going to be there. If you're Northern Irish or you just really like Northern Ireland, you want to run that team, it's going to be there. There is a percentage chance for a player to generate for every country. The smaller the country or the more obscure, the lesser a chance. It's like the United States doesn't have as much of a chance as England, even though it's bigger, but Quidditch isn't as popular over there. Plus, also, this is the British and Irish Quidditch League. There's going to be Americans, there's going to be Spanish, there's going to be French, but the majority is going to rely in the United Kingdom and Ireland, of course. So this is Appleby. Uh, I'm I'm not unimpressed with them. They kind of look pretty dangerous. If you're looking at a team, this might be a good one to pick. Taking up next is the Ballycastle Bats. This is a team out of Northern Ireland and Ballycastle. They play at Ballycastle Court. Also not looking too bad. I'm going to be honest. Jack Finn, the Irishman, looks pretty solid. Rory McLeod out of Scotland. And then they've got a seeker there, and Ethan Williamson, also out of Northern Ireland. I mean, that's a pretty good looking team. I haven't included anything with the salaries here. Every team is under the salary cap. There will be some allowances for teams to maybe drop a few players that they really hate and look through the free agency list and change them out without any dropping penalties, just because teams are so close. And some of these players really may not be very good at all. We have plenty of free agents available. You can also trade with other teams. I didn't really touch about that earlier, but I'll talk about that here in a second. This is Ballycastle. Okay, all right, I like it. Looks good. Next up, we have the Caerphilly Catapults and Caerphilly, Wales. If you're Welsh and I just butchered that name, I apologize. I don't really know how to say it. That's what it looks like. It looks like Caerphilly. Could be Caerphilly, I guess. I don't really know. This is what their roster is looking like. So while you take a look over this, trades. You can trade with other teams. There are rules on that, of course, as there have to be. You cannot just dump a player with their salary. If you're trading players, you have to be within 10% of the salary match, which means if you're trading a player who makes $10 million on average, or 10 million galleons on average, the player you're trading for has to make 9 million on average. That's a 10% match. So you can't just trade a guy for 1 million to 10 million and dump a whole bunch of salary and kind of game the system that way and work with your friends. We've seen that happen before. I've seen it happen in other games, so that's a thing that we've implemented. That's a similar rule to the NBA, if you're familiar with that at all. So there's Caerphilly. Doesn't look too terrible either. The Chasers are seeming to generate really nicely here. So I feel like in this league we're going to be having some pretty good scoring chances. Next up, if you're familiar with Cannon, you've probably been waiting for this team, possibly, but it's the Chudley Cannons. Ron Weasley's favorite team, a lot of people's favorite team, of course. A little maligned in Cannon, where they don't really have the opportunity to win, just because that's the way it was made. But they're looking decent in here. Looks like they might possibly have a chance. If you look over this roster, check it out. Let me talk about two of the things in the corners here. Of course, Chudley in Chudley, England is our first or second English team that we've seen. In the top right, of course, you're going to probably know what that is. That's the team logo. So Chudley, they've got the two cannons following the cannonball. In the top left is every team's jersey. You'll be able to see these on your team sheets as well. Every team has a jersey that I've mocked up for them. In the future, we'll be allowing custom jerseys. In fact, I may go ahead and allow those now. If you are able to make your own custom jersey, you want to make a custom one, I have modeled them off of what came out of Quidditch Through the Ages. So this is what the jerseys more or less look like in Quidditch Through the Ages. So some of them are pretty bland. Some of them are just the team color with the team logo. Chudley's isn't the worst example of this. We'll see some other ones. I think the next one up is a prime example of that. But if you want to make your own custom jersey, even if you want to make your own custom logo, that's perfectly fine. You can submit it to me. We'll get it changed. But Chudley looks like it could be okay. There's some give and take there. Like if we look at Finn McMillan, he's good at passing the ball. He's good at scoring the ball, but he's got pretty dreadful defense. Then you get that flip, Alex Russell. She is a really good defender who can't really pass. So Chudley's got some opportunity, but they may end up struggling. And I apologize if you're a huge fan, but I may have accidentally recreated canon there. Next team up we've got is the Falmouth Falcons, also out of England. Don't have any Englishmen on their team, which is interesting, but I could be wrong, but I think that's our first Mexican that I've seen on the team. So Mexico is, of course, one of the teams or one of the countries that is available. As you can see here, Ireland, Scotland, America, England. Oh, they do have Englishmen there. Alfie Ford saving the English team to having an Englishman. All sorts of teams available or all sorts of countries available. So that's the Falmouth Falcons. Not a terrible name. I kind of partial to the name. It's probably not the team I'm going to take, but it's a sweet name, and they don't look terrible either. And looking over the teams, I keep saying they're not terrible. That may end up hurting when I say that, and you're like, oh yeah, he said they didn't look bad. I'm going to go ahead and take them. The way rosters were generated was to make teams closer to each other so that there is some parity at the beginning. Free agents loosened that restriction, so you can go out and grab a guy that's better than what you've got on your roster. And of course, there is roster progressions, which we'll talk about here in a minute as well. But that's Falmouth. The next team we're going to talk about up here is a special team. Anybody who's a fan of it knows about it. It's the Holyhead Harpies. Holyhead is unique in that if you've been paying attention to all these columns, you'll see you've got your name, you've got your age, what position they play, what country they come from, all their attributes, but you also see gender. Quidditch, of course, is a open gender sport. It is not closed off to only males or only females. Both males and females can play. Holyhead is one of the it's the only exception to this. They only roster females. So if you take this team, just know that that is a restriction for you. If you go out and try and sign male players to the team, it will be rejected because Holyhead only rosters female players. It's the only team that does this. It's the only team that has a gender restriction. They're famous for that. They have a lot of fans because of it, and we will be keeping that. Holyhead looks dangerous. I'd be scared to play them. They got a lot of players that are 50 overalls. Their beaters look a little bit better than everybody else, and the seekers don't look awful either. They could use some help in the seeker category, but it's not anything to sneeze at. So that's the Holyhead Harpies. Like I said, very famous, very important to some people, so that's going to be open for people to take. Next up, we have the Kenmare Kestrels out of Ireland. I believe this is our only pure Irish team. There's a couple, maybe just one, Northern Irish team, but this is the only team out of the Republic of Ireland. So we talked about progressions there a second ago. Progressions, I don't have this attribute modeled in these tables, but every player also has a potential. Those are ranked A, B, C, and D. Of course, the higher your potential, the higher potential player you are. Every team or every player also has a hidden prime age. The closer they get to that prime, the more they're going to progress, especially based on their potential. An A player is going to progress better than a D player. That will be balanced, though, against your actual usage. It's your average usage based on the season. So if you have a player who's averaging 90% usage and they're a D potential, they may progress just as much of a player who's an A potential, but they're only averaging 10% usage on the year. So potential is something that you have to look out for. It's something you want to pay attention to when you're signing players. You also want to pay attention to their age. An older player isn't going to progress as well. In fact, they're going to start to regress after a certain age past their prime age which you won't know, but you'll see it start to fall potentially. And as they get older, as they fall down even further, they will just retire because they know the time has come and it's just time to hang it up. The higher the potential, the less that regression is going to impact them, but it will impact everybody at some point. Father Time is undefeated. Ask Tom Brady. Hasn't caught up to LeBron yet, but it's going to because Father Time is undefeated. So that's how we model that. So that's Kenmare. That's the Irish team. And you can check that one out. Next up, we have a Scottish team, the Montrose Magpies out of Montrose, Scotland. A few Scottish players on the team. No, I'm trying not to talk about these rosters too many. It's the first time I'm seeing them as well. Those of you who are familiar with how I hesitated there. Harper Christie caught my eye because she is bees across the board. I don't think I've seen that before, at least in this sim. It's kind of cool to see. Again, that is relative to all other chasers. So blocking doesn't matter for chasers, but when compared to all other chasers, she's a B. So it's cool to see. It caught my eye. Those of you who have played ground ball, you've played any other simulator that I've made, you'll know that, or I hope you know that I'm very impartial. I try to be as fair as possible. That's why everything is based completely on math. I don't do any judgment calls. So when I'm generating these things, when I'm generating the game results, I'm not watching them. I'm not adjusting them at all. So I'm seeing these rosters for the first time just as you are. So that's why some of them kind of taking me by surprise, like the all B's there with Harper Christie. So it's just cool to see. Anyway, that's the Magpies. That's one of the Scottish teams. Next up, we have another Scottish team. It's the Pride of Portree, out of Portree, Scotland. This is your purple and gold team. Like I said, I'm trying not to say much. There's another all B, Andrew Roulette, out of Canada, Quebecois. All right. It's not against any Quebecois. It grabs me when I see it because I don't expect it. Oh man, Portrait could be dangerous on the chaser front as well. Yeah. They have a pretty good seeker too, so they'll be fun to watch. Pride of Portree is the only team that isn't city mascot. It's mascot then city, right? So that's a fun thing. So that's Pride of Portree. Next up is Puddlemere United. Puddlemere is a funny team. Any of you familiar, you may know that is Albus Dumbledore's favorite team. That's the team that he claims. It's also the only team that we don't actually know where it's located. It doesn't have a specific location. That's why I've put it as Dorset, England. There is nothing in England called Puddlemere. There's no village. There's no town. I think there's what's it called? Puddle Village or something like. There's something that's close, but there's no Puddlemere. There's a river Piddle, so that's a place that it's theorized to exist. But we just don't know. I think it's the oldest team in the league. It's the first one that was founded, and so it has the most secrecy behind it as well, because of course the secrecy laws that surround the Wizarding World. This team also has 2 players out of Mexico. That's pretty fun to see. Anyway, that's Puddlemere United, who could be a favorite of some people and could be a pretty good team to watch, to be honest. Next up, we have the Tutshill Tornadoes out of Tutshill, England, another English team. again, check out the roster. See if you like it. See if you like the logo. Do you like Tornadoes? Do you like Tutshill? Do you like the baby blues and on the dark blue? Tutshill. This is like the most boring segment, I know, but I'm just trying to let you absorb the rosters and not let me impact them in any way. I also don't want to be like, hey, here's Tutshill, and then fast forward to the next one. I spent so much time on all the other rosters. So that's Tutshill. Next up, we have another Scottish team. This one, the Wigtown Wanderers. It's our last Scottish team. I believe it's the third one, if I'm keeping track correctly. A funny story behind them. I don't know it. You can look it up, but it has something to do with wizards and meat cleavers and butchers and all sorts of stuff. It's kind of a crazy story. I don't recall it off the top of my head, but it's a fun one. It's also the first Japanese player that I've seen. I'm sure it's not the actual first one. I just haven't been paying attention to that much. He's pretty good. Or I'm sorry, she's pretty good. Makiko Yamaguchi out of Japan. She'll be dangerous. She'll be a good player to watch. They got a decent. No, they got two decent seekers, so that'll be good for them. That's the last Scottish team. That's Wigtown Wanderers. This is also the worst jersey, in my opinion. This is what I was talking about, that they just kind of slapped the color and the logo. It's an all-red jersey with just the logo on the front. It's kind of boring. So if you take Wigtown, maybe you want to shush that up a little bit, get a little bit of a better jersey. The logo is cool. I like the logo a lot, but it's absolutely the most boring jersey. Anyway, last but not least, the Wimbourne Wasps. You may be familiar with this one if you've read the books. This is the team that Ludo Bagman was on. They also have probably the most detailed jersey of all the teams, just because there was a character in the books who played on the team. It's kind of a cool jersey. It's more than the color of the team with the logo on the front. Instead, it's stripes of the team with the logo on the front. So, little different. I might end up taking Wimbourne myself, but they are a roster in rough shape, in my opinion. They're going to struggle. Emil Hermann out of Germany just frankly isn't that great. You can pass the ball, but not much else. Owen Johnston is a good player to build around, but there's not a lot to work with to start this roster, but it could be special for somebody. I may take it. I haven't decided yet, but that's the Wimbourne Wasps. That's our 13th and final team. You notice we went in alphabetical order, so you probably say, oh, W. Oh, we're done. There's nobody in Z, right? No, there's nobody in Z. So that is the British and Irish Quidditch League. That is the map of them. Not the greatest map, I know. A little fuzzy, but yeah, it works. You can kind of see where everybody's located there. The three Scottish teams, the few English teams, the Welsh team, the one Irish, and the Northern Irish team. So it's just kind of an idea of where everybody's located. It's just fun to watch. I have Puddlemere down there near Wimbourne. Again, we don't know exactly where they're located, but that is the kind of consensus theory on where they may be located. So that's the British and Irish Quidditch League. That's all the teams. That's all 13 and where they're located and what they kind of look like. So again, if you're interested in taking over a team, drop down to the Discord. If you're already in it, tag me in the Quidditch chat. Say, hey, I want to take over the Pride of Portree. I want to take over Puddlemere United. Any team is available. It is first come, first serve. So if you're watching this video and you drop in there right now before anybody else, and that's the team you want, sorry to anybody else who watched it afterwards. I'm sorry. There's no other more fair way to do it. First come, first serve. Grab the team that you want. Whether you like the colors, whether you like the roster, whether you just like the team because of something from canon. So now that we know all the teams, now that we know how everything kind of works, when does this work? Like, when is this going to start? Well, it's going to start as soon as possible. This is our weekly schedule. Again, it's going to start as soon as possible. Once we have some teams assigned, we get everybody looking at their rosters, assign them as fast as we possibly can, pick up some teams. I'll probably give a week, probably about a week and a half for everybody to pick the teams that they want, grab players off of free agency that they want, manipulate their rosters. Because come Tuesday, what would be that? So that'll be 25. Will be next Wednesday. Yeah, so not this coming Tuesday, but the Tuesday following that. If anybody wants to pull up is that a Halloween? That might be the 31st. That is when games are going to start. Games are going to run twice a week. This way we can get it done in a reasonable time before everybody gets bored and it's like, oh, it's taking so long. It'll be 2 games a week, so it'll be 13 weeks total on the season. Games will run every Tuesday and every Thursday. You have to have your game plan in and your usage set, your strategy set, your minutes set correctly, or your usage set correctly by 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on Tuesdays and Thursdays. If you do not have them set by that time, if you cause the sync to have an error, I will fix it, but I will fix it in a way that it still doesn't work. Your game will not run. You will be automatically forfeit. I'm not going to sit here. It's not fair to everybody else who set it on time. It's not fair to me to have to track people down and say, hey, set your roster. You have an hour, or you have 3 hours to set it. It's just not going to happen. If you do not have it set on time when they run, your team will forfeit. I believe I've set it at a 500-0 forfeit. Your opponent will get 500 automatic points. You'll get 0. You'll lose. So please set your rosters on time. It only takes a couple minutes a week. We're not asking for a ton of time here. And in fact, most teams, once they've set it the first time, they really don't want to mess with it because they find something that works. Or, they run through a few games and like, all right, this is what's working for me, and they don't have to set it again until an injury occurs. In which case, it's usually just a few tweaks. It only takes a few minutes a week. That's all I'm asking from you if you take a team. You, of course, can dedicate more time to that. If you hop on the forum or you're in the Discord, you want to write down big breakdowns of your game and what you saw and what you would like to see more, or breakdowns of the league. I have seen that. I've done that myself. Of course, I'm doing this with this video. It caused me to make entire leagues for myself as well. But Tuesdays and Thursdays, 9 a.m. Eastern Time, the game plans are due. The sync will run where it will sync all the teams. It will sync their the rosters and all that. And then at 12 p.m. Eastern, we will start streaming the games. Every game will be streamed. I'll probably start with just one by one, see how well that goes. If we end up streaming them till midnight, well, then I'll break them in half and we'll stream one game in one channel and a second game in another, so they get done in a reasonable time. Because they don't end until the snitch gets caught, some of these games are going to last a lot longer than others. We could see some imbalance there. Fridays will be the free agent sync. So you are able to bid on a free agent. The highest bidder wins. You'll be able to see who the highest bidder is. You'll be able to continue to bid on it. It's the only fair way to do it. Whoever is the highest bidder is who wins. So that will sync at 9 a.m. on Friday. That's how long you have to get in your highest bid and outbid the other teams who are fighting with you. Sundays, Mondays, Wednesdays, Saturdays, we're not doing anything. Of course, please jump in the Discord, chat, make friends, make suggestions, give me feedback, anything you like. But that is the British and Irish Quidditch League. That's the Ministry of Fantastical Games and Sports. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I know it went on pretty long. You may be pretty bored by now. But hop into Discord. The link's up here on the video. Of course, it will be down in the description as well. Check it out. Season 1 is going to start here in a week and a half. I think it's going to start on Halloween if I did my math right. If I'm remembering the calendar correctly. I'm really excited. I know other people are really excited. If you've watched this video, you got all the way here, you must be excited. So I'll see you guys there. And, we're going to have fun. Appreciate it.